So the hope for today is for each person to start to feel comfortable creating your own approach to advising. Every person should have an approach that they feel comfortable with in terms of how you want to advise students. There's 4 of us up in the counseling center that do academic advisement. Every single one of us has a different approach. And that's okay, because the students get to pick and choose who they're going to see. So if a student has a conversation with me and doesn't like my approach, well, the next time they can make an appointment with Toby, and so on and so forth. So it's about creating something that you're comfortable with, and then inviting students to have those conversations with you. Advising can be viewed as a teaching tool.
But that's the nice thing about the SAIN report, is that because you can click into certain areas and see what's available. And what I found in volunteering over or putting my 8 hours in over at the counseling center, once students know how to navigate a SAIN and you tell them what to do, they'll say, well, I want to take it on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and I give them one of those block schedule things. I'm like, go ahead, you pick your schedule, you do what you want, the needs that you need to fulfill, but make sure you're getting what you need in order for your degree requirements. And here's how to navigate that. And I found that when you help students and you give students and faculty the tools of the navigation of the SAIN report, in the schedule on Banner and whatnot, that they end up being pretty successful, and they're happy that you spent like the 2 minutes with them to give them the brief tutorial.
Let's talk about challenge and support, particularly for developmental students. And again, everybody is going to have their own approach. Mine is, I want you to try this, but I'm not going to let you fail, because that's why they've got a blue form, and that's why you need a signature. So I want you to just look at your SAIN report and see what you can cull from that you need. And then we're going to go back over it. Because I don't want to sit there and tell the students, let's go through every English class that's being offered and click on every one and read every one. Right? I want you to do that, because I want you to choose classes based on what you enjoy and based on your interests, and this idea, particularly where liberal arts students, they need to start creating a path. They need to leave here with an idea of a major. So what classes have you enjoyed, and how can we keep filling your schedule with some of those classes while balancing with the other classes that you need? So I do make them try on their own. Usually they get about 2/3 of it right. And then we'll talk about, all right, this is where you went wrong, and this is why it's a little confusing. And the SAIN report is confusing, because it's based on credit hours, and we don't really base things on credit hours. We've got 4, we've got 3. So I most of the time I know exactly where they're going to potentially have an error, and that's when we fix it. I will never build a student schedule. And if you want to build schedules, you go right ahead and build a schedule. I'm not going to stop you. But I don't think that, for me, that's the best use of my time with a student. Let's talk about some bigger issues. In terms of where's the support for students building schedules. Your student centers have computer labs that are staffed with students who are trained on how to teach other students how to use those schedules. Your advising centers are going to be staffed that way, and your mentor and your faculty centers are going to be staffed that way. So students are going to have a variety of support networks to go to for simply putting classes into time blocks.
Exactly.
Just in terms of, and some of this then comes back to just some of the experiences that I've had in the counseling center, and again, this is a suggestion on approach, would be, as best you can, to kind of keep track of some of those conversations that you have with students. One, because sometimes they come back and you don't remember what the conversation was, and you have some notes. But the other is that every now and again they're going to say, so-and-so told me to do this. And oftentimes you actually never told the student that. And so, for me, when I first moved over to the counseling center, it was a huge change to suddenly have to keep track of these types of things. But I will tell you now that I just keep, you know, I just write some notes about, all right, I talked to the student today about transferring.
And I think that's what, if I understand it correctly, that's the goal of Title III. And the in my first time in 8 years of being here, we were really being serious in talking about advisement. I mean, there's an agenda-setting item right there that's been thrown out, advisement, right? And now it's more serious now than I thought when I first came aboard. And I still think we're trying to define what it means to advise. And I think it goes back to what Patty was saying, that we all have our own approach. You know, for instance, Jane Marie has her certain kind of approach, and some of us maybe would be willing to take on maybe some more personal things with students or advice and whatnot. But I also see your point. How does that get placed into 8 hours and documented and validated?
Lives. I mean,
Sure,
extra
absolutely.
professional.
And that's a conversation that I believe, and I hope is still taking place in somewhere. And
It's something that I think we need to continue to
Right.
raise.
How about it?
In terms of this campus, for students for scheduling, you can send them to 3 places. You can send them to testing and advising.
Where is that?
That is in the Ammerman building, room 200, where the info booth is.
Okay.
You can send them to the Student Center Information Booth. The computer lab that's right next to the information booth is staffed with a student. And all these places are staffed with students to help build schedules. And then the library, academic computing, will have a student staff. Yep, they've added that as well.
And this is for the priority registration period?
During priority registration period, which for those of you that didn't hear, did get moved up to November 7th, is now the start. Is now
prescriptive versus non-prescriptive. I see at least this institution moving towards a more holistic model of advising, which includes the conversations that we had before and after class in the hallways with our students, and et cetera, and the prescriptive. I think faculty should know how to read a SAIN report, right? And it can be a little tricky at first, and Patty will show us today, you know, how to navigate some of that. And I always throw it out there. I'm never afraid to say I don't know. I don't know, but I will find out.
You have to say that.
And I do, and I call Patty, I call Linda, and there was a student one time, he because at the end of the day, the student, a lot of this is prescriptive. Students need X number of credits to earn a degree, to transfer into or graduate, whatever, and that's how we all arrived here anyway, right? We earned our degrees in a prescriptive manner. We were told to take certain, right, to fulfill certain obligations. So that still does take place. But I think also what Adam is saying too is that we need that more holistic approach. And how do we evaluate all that within 8 hours or whatever? And at the end of the day, we probably do more than 8 hours in a semester, right? Everyone's concerns correctly, and this is the holistic kind of model of advising that I think we keep going back to. Every campus is going to have their own culture, every department will have their own culture, and every faculty member will have their own touch/view on advising, right? But at the end of the day, there is that SAIN report, and that SAIN report is very prescriptive, and I think learning to read and navigate that, even though we don't maybe know what all those classes mean or what they are, I think that is one true said foundational thing that keeps students retained and eventually graduated or to transfer or whatever they, right? That's the thing that I think that intimidates people, that they don't know how to read it or don't know what to do with it. And then sometimes the advisement gets lost from that prescriptive notion, right? But the culture and the touch of how we navigate that, yeah, that'll be different with every campus and department and faculty member. But that foundational piece is also really important too.
Here's just a few things that you can look at to understand who your student is. To understand the conversation and understand maybe where they're coming from a little bit. So you would go into banner. And we're gonna use one of the students in my class will be our guinea pig for today. See, now this is something you know much better than I do, where our rosters are. All right, so my class roster for fall. Alrighty. So let's pick somebody. Personal growth is a 3-credit freshman seminar for students that are in all developmental classes. Okay, so you go down to your student advisement menu. You put in your student's ID. Oh, no, that's not working that way. And there's Chad. So he comes up. If you want to see if Chad has any holds on his account, so we see Chad has a developmental studies hold, so that means that Chad would need you to sign a blue piece of paper. Other holds that might come up there is a financial hold. You send him to cashier.
Or the medical.
Or the medical hold. Every now and again you'll see a dean's hold. That's a discipline issue. You send him to Dean Bartolotta. The developmental hold, we sign the blue forms. Anybody, any faculty member can sign a blue form. All the other holds, and it tells you quite exactly where they need to go. Like it'll say cashier, library, dean's office right there.
Or financial aid.
Never?
No?
No, it would be
Okay.
cashier.
Cashier,
If they owe us money, they have to see the cashier.
Okay.
The back button wasn't working. Okay. Test scores with English and math faculty members in here. You know your the test scores, but sometimes this gives you an idea of a starting place of a student. And then what I want to point out, so the students take an algebra test, an arithmetic, or reading and sentence skills. All right, and you can see the dates that they took them, the placements that were made. All right, and just what I'd like to point out, because it was one of the things that I didn't realize, is that these numbers are out of 120. All right, so it gives you an idea, you know, where they're coming from in terms of where their math skills are, where their English skills are. When students come through the process, they're admitted to the college. We review their high school transcripts. If the high school transcripts demonstrates that we need to know more about where to place the students, they'll take these sections. Okay, so, and then after they take this test, then they see a counselor, and the counselor sits down with the student. A lot of us will show them the test scores and then go through with them. Let's talk about your English regions. Let's talk about the math regions. Let's talk about your social studies regions. And have a conversation with them about the placements. That does not mean that they're happy about it, and it doesn't mean that they're not going to try to find somebody who will give them better news than we did. So if you do have a student who says to you, I don't understand why I'm in these classes, click on the screen and say, let's talk about how you did. And then the next conversation is, well, I didn't take that test seriously. They have to sign an affidavit saying that they're taking the test seriously.
That's good.
Yes, if there's a discrepancy. So let's say I have a student who got, let's say 60 on sentence skills, but they've had 4 years of English, and in their last semester took like an English lit, and did well, you know, 80s, 90s. If I see that there's a discrepancy, or any counselor sees a discrepancy, we will retest the student. What I like about the unofficial transcript is you get, and of course Chad is a first semester student, but you get to see the academic history. So if a student has been around for a while and has kind of played in different areas, this will give you an idea. So if a student bounced from auto tech to anatomy and physiology 1 to communications to an advanced English, maybe you want to have the conversation more about, so where do you see yourself going? You know, you seem to have taken lots of different kinds of things. What are you enjoying? So it just gives you a nice idea of how have they been choosing classes. Or you can see if they're just reading off the same report and just choosing. And again, what do you like? What are you enjoying? We want you to leave here with an idea of a major, particularly for those of us that are working with the liberal arts students more. Right? So that, again, Chad, we don't have too much of a history on him yet. But it's a useful tool for those of us who are seeing students who are maybe beyond